Alright, in this video I want to go over seamless textures and how to use them in games, what they are. So we'll go to photopea.com. We'll open up Photopea. And once we have this open, I'm just going to open up our game template just to show y'all what a seamless texture is. So if we actually come in here and create a 3D object, and we'll just put this over here, and we'll position it so I can use it in a second. And I'll create a duplicate so we can see a second one. Now these are both going to be used to put the texture on, but you can see they come in the world looking like this. They don't have textures original. So you have to create a seamless texture in order to get larger textures and repeating textures. And I'll just duplicate these. I'm going to scale up one of them just so we can see what it looks like to create a larger texture as well. And I'll scale it up and put it right here. So we have 3 of these. None of them come with textures, and that's why we have to learn how to do this. So to add one, I'll just show you what it looks like to have a texture. These are some of the textures I previously made. You see one over here, one here, things like this. But if you want to add it to it, what you do is you go to scripts, and you go to your texture. So I select an object, put a texture script on it. Now this is personally my script that I've created in order to not have to have a lot of materials to save space for game creation. This is how I like to do it. And once you put the script on an object, you'll see texture assigner right here. And this just lets us create the material or assign the texture at runtime to the material. And that just helps us save space in our files. So to add a texture here, I'll go into my textures and I'll select, say this one right here. And over here, I'll just drag in my texture. And you can now see there's a texture on this, right? But I can scale the texture to make it smaller or larger as I need it. So if I open up the shader right below the texture assigner script or at the bottom of our object inspector, so if I select an object at the bottom, it has a material. If I scroll down into that material, so I click the little arrow, open it up, and I go down to our tiling, I can scale up this tile and it starts to kind of compress the texture, giving it more information and allowing me to create a more detailed look to a surface. Now, the thing about this is when you do scale up a texture or scale down a texture, depending on what you're doing, it can have 2 different results. So scaling it or compressing it can give you more information, but if you don't do it correctly, you'll get seams that show up. So here you can kind of see there's like a like grass patch that repeats right here. That's not a seam. That's technically still fine, but it's definitely visible. And you try to remove stuff like that. If I take the mouse out right here, you can see right here, there's the seam right here. So the better you blend the seam, the less you'll see this stuff. Now, in terms of expanding it too far, I'll show you what that looks like. If I take the same thing and I go the other way with it, so instead of going up in numbers, I go down. So we'll go down to 0.25, 0.25. You'll see you start to get this warped look to a texture, or you're scaling up the image too much, and it's going to become very pixelated and distorted. But if we were to scale it up or scale it down in terms of what we're doing, we want to make sure our texture is as versatile as possible. That way we can create lots of different looks and things within a game from one texture. So how do we make textures? Well, let's jump out of Unity to show you that. So I'll drag Unity to the side. And here I'm just going to open a file. So I'll go File New or New Project. And I'll say Instagram just to get the square shape so we can see that it's 1080 by 1080, but usually these are 256 by 256 or 512 by 512 or extra information. I'm going to do 256 for this one just because you could use either one or smaller if you're looking for a pixelated game. Here I'm going to say texture and we're going to leave this at 72 dpi. Make sure this is on pixels and we'll say create. We'll get a square looking image. Now in texturing, you want to use square images because the way UVs work, the way the scaling works on the texture inside of a video game, when we use it in a video game, it has a scale set up in the map. So you can see the X and the Y. So that'd be X and Y, and they're equal. So they create a square, and that's how they're just used mathematically. So make sure you're using square shapes when you're doing textures, preferably that breakdown by 2. So in terms of breaking it down by 2, the textures would break down like this, and it's just generally how we do it. It would go 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, and 256, and 512. And that's generally what we use as textures. You can go larger than this if you need, but we tend to stay in this range to try to save space in our files and things like that. So how do we create a texture? The first thing we want to do is find a source file or a source and image manipulate it. You can do it by hand if you wanted to for hand-drawn textures, but another easier way to do this is to just use source imagery. Free images that you can find to guarantee that they're free to use would be like Pexels. If you go to pexels.com, you can use their photos, which are free to use, and you could say like textures. And here you can look at it and see what you get. Just know that if it's a solid line structure like this, it'll be harder to create a seamless version of it. If it's a abstract, it's a little easier to create seamless versions. Let's look at something abstract so it's not too hard for this video. And let's say we wanted this, for instance. I could copy this, copy image, and go back to PhotoBeam, and go edit, paste, and then I'll allow it to paste it. Now it's too large for the canvas, and what I mean by that is by scale back with space and control. So not scale back, zoom back, I guess. Space and control and left click and drag, I can zoom out. And now I go edit, pre-transform, and you'll see the image is larger than our canvas. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna scale this down until it's just larger on whichever side, the side or the top, just larger than the image. And then we're going to position it, make sure we got what we want, where we want it, and your layer is selected. Don't have it on the background layer. You want to select the layer. Then you'll go to your selection tool and you'll drag select the whole area, or say select all, edit copy, and edit paste. And now we'll get this new layer, and we can delete these two layers below. So not the one we just worked on, but the two below it. So just show you, we'll delete layer 1 and background by hitting delete on the keyboard. We can also delete them just down here. We can select them and hit the trash can to delete them. And this is our new texture. So how do we make it seamless? And how do we know if it's seamless? What we need to do is with this layer selected, go to filter, other, and we go to offset. And you'll see when I offset these horizontally or vertically, we'll get this like sort of like a tile looking thing, but these lines are the edges of our image. So we need to fix these. So hit OK to finalize it so we can see the lines. And then we go to our spot healing brush, which is right above our normal brush. So this one that looks like a little healing tool, but it's got this little asterisk next to it. If you click and hold on it, you'll see healing brush and then spot healing. We go to that, and then we want to right click out here or go up here to the top left and change the size so that it's slightly bigger than the area of the line, something like this. And then we drop the hardness all the way down. So we get something like this. And then we're ready to go. So we can just select little spots to blend the line work. So you see on the hard line up here to there. So we're going to try to get rid of it by selecting over it again. Sometimes it'll get rid of it. Sometimes it won't. Sometimes it'll keep adding line work and you'll have to keep working with it. And I'll show you what to do if it won't get rid of the extra line. Like if it's like here, it's getting rid of it down here. So we can keep blending. But if it won't get rid of it, be like keep trying and the line just stays there. Another way to get rid of it is to use the clone stamp tool. So we're going to keep trying it and see if we can get rid of it. Seems like we can't get rid of this line. It just keeps trying to repeat. What we can do is go down, not to the brush tool, but to the clone stamp tool right here. And we'll change this to say all layers, just in case you have editing that's happening. So clone stamp tool, all layers. And then if we go out into our image and we hold Alt and left click, we'll notice that I can drag this image wherever I want. So that's how it works. What we want to do before we do that though is change our size again, change our hardness all the way down, giving it a fall off. That way whenever we add the image, it blends better and it's not like a hard image. Notice if I don't change the fall off, I get a solid line. So to fix that, we can change the drop off by changing hardness right there or right here. Or we can do it on the fly. If you don't know how to do that on the fly, you hold Alt and right click to drag to change the size of your brush, and the hardness is up and down. So Alt right click, up and down for hardness, left and right for size. And then once we have that, we can just hold Alt and left click to sample an area. And then if I start drawing right here, you'll see I can put blotches or new information from where I sample over the area where I want to change that line. That won't go away for some reason with the spot healing tool. So once we do it a few times and we get different patterns and areas, and we just kind of blend it as we see fit so that there's no like weird line work that we're seeing, then we're going to go back to filter, other, and we're going to go to offset again. We're going to shift it and see if we still see any line work. And if you still see lines showing up in here, like right here's a line, we can put that in the center and we'll hit OK. And now we'll try to heal this. So we'll go back up to our healing brush, spot healing brush, heal this, see if it blends. It did, so that's good. And then once we do the filter, we keep doing the filter other offset until we don't see any lines that are giving us like a distinct line. Once we have that, we can say OK. And then we've created the texture. Now we need to export it for use inside of a game engine. So before you export it, you'd want to hit save as PSD. And you save this to your downloads. So you go texture, and I'll just call this texture paint. It kind of looks like a paint texture. And I'll say save. And you make sure when you save this as PSD, because if you export it and it crashes, you'll lose your work. So you want to save your edit file first, save as PSD, and then export as PNG to get your file for Unity. So once you have your PSD saved, you'll go File, Export as PNG, and this is what you use inside of Unity. And you'll just hit Save, because it'll already have a name based on the project, and it'll say PNG down here, and you'll hit Save. And then you'll be able to move it into Unity to actually use it. So to use a texture, we want to open our Unity, and then we can go to Extra Paint right here inside of our downloads where it's saved. And we drag this into our textures folder, and it creates a new duplicate of that. What I mean by that is if I show this in our project folder, so here we have our project folder, as you can see, desktop, Unity projects, GameJam template, assets, master assets, so assets, master assets, textures, textures. So now we have it inside of our project. What we can do is we can select an object. So we can select like this object right here where we put our texture script before, and we can drag in our texture. And we can do the same thing on this one. And you'll see now we have our texture in the world, but we can use this more than one way. So if I were to, I just want to make one more duplicate here just to show you. We've got these three here. I'm going to take this one, open it up, and I'm going to change this to like 0.25. Then this one I'm going to leave alone. This one I'm going to open up the material as well underneath texture, and I'm going to change this to like 5 just to show you. So as you can see, when we playtest this and we look at our textures, they're going to appear different, but they shouldn't appear with seams like hard lines. This one you can see has repeating like tile to it, and that's because of the lighting, which we could fix the lighting by adding a shading layer on top of it. But you don't have to do that. It really depends on what you're trying to get out of it. Like this texture kind of looks like a quilt or something when it's repeated. When it's like this, it just looks like a regular floor piece. And when it's like this, it looks like a ginormous, like stretched canvas or something. And that's really all you do when you're creating seamless textures, is you're creating something that can be used in many different ways. Another cool thing that you can do with textures, aside from creating seamless textures, is you can add color into the texture that's after the fact. So we'll just do like 1.5 here, just to show you. It's a little bit different when you don't scale it too large. You get something like this. So you can see it's a little different than the original. And then we can add color into this by going up here to the albedo, and we could change the color effect on it. And that's another way to work with the textures on the fly as well. And you can just do this however you see fit to create different styles within your game from one texture. Yeah, that's why we do seamless textures. Hope you enjoyed the video. Alright, I just wanted to clarify real quick, with textures, they don't have to be seamless. However, it is good to make them seamless to save for file space and load times, but you don't have to, and I'll show you why here in a second. So we'll just click on this. This will be like a good wall texture, for instance, but I don't need this to be a seamless texture. So I'll copy this. I'll just go right-click copy, go into Photo P, edit paste. Here I've got my texture, and it's not seamless. I haven't fixed anything. And then I can just go File, Export as PNG, and I'll call it wall, hit save. I already did this once, so I'll just click this to save it as a replacing file. If I wanted to name it something new, I could, but I don't want to. Then I hit save. It saves to my downloads folder. So I'll just grab my downloads and pull it over, and I will drag this wall down in here into my textures folder. And then in here, I can add it to my walls right here. So I'll just click on the wall, add it to my texture, and then same for these, and I'll show you the difference. So when we're working with a texture, we can visibly see the difference real quick by doing this. If I take this texture, leave it alone, this one, I'll scale it up a little bit. So I'll scale this to like 6, and we'll do like 5 here. And then this one, you'll notice this entire texture right here is stretched across the whole face of it. So the value of creating a seamless texture is we can scale it when we stretch a wall like this. We can scale it to match. And then that way, the wall doesn't seem like it's got a like stretched image across it, and it actually fits the world. Like it's not distorted in some sort of weird way. So that's one way to recognize it. Another way to recognize it is the repeating pattern here. This tiling you get when you repeat it too much. And then a normal wall like this would work fine with a non-seamless texture. But that's just how we do it. We try to save space and we try to allow the textures to function in multiple ways. And when it's seamless, you won't get these line breaks when it stretches across. And that's kind of what we're doing when we're creating seamless styles or seamless textures. So hopefully that made sense. And yeah, that's how we create a seamless texture. Hope you enjoyed it, and later.